Hello and welcome. My name's Corby Bryan, and I'm going to talk to you about how to catch a hummingbird. Well, and also why. But first, let's listen to this video of a hummingbird actually in the wild. And this is at half speed. So pretty stinking awesome and beautiful creatures. They can fly like 60 miles an hour. I'm not sure if you knew that. Let me give you some history and background. So why did we do this? My father, who's an ornithologist, has done a study, included it from 2007 to 2019. They banded like 21,000 birds, something like that, and measured all sorts of information on the birds. But more importantly, they learned and set a baseline for future studies, right? So learn about migration patterns, how they handle in the winter times, and actually where they end up liking to go from a nesting point and things like that. This is a picture of a band that actually goes on the foot. That's how they band the hummingbirds. You can see it's about the size of Abe Lincoln's chin there on a penny, and they use a special set of pliers to actually put these bands on the hummingbirds. Now, this is one of the graphs that have been produced out of the study. So you can see you've got that yellow area, and that's where they tend to migrate in the different seasons. But then in the wintertime, they're in the blue, and in the summertime, in the red areas. Now this is for a rufous hummingbird. So the picture of a rufous just showed up on the screen. So that is a beautiful hummingbird called a rufous hummingbird. And my father caught this bird in Fort Davis, Texas, in West Texas, and banded it. And then in the next summer, the next migration season, another person in Alaska caught the exact same bird. And they did this for a few years, actually catching the bird in the exact same spots in Alaska and Fort Davis, which is really cool. So how do they actually catch the hummingbird? This is where I come in, the engineering side. So currently what they were doing was using a fishing line. The scientists would have a fishing line hooked up to the door of a cage, and you see the cage there on the right with a hummingbird feeder in it. So what would happen is the hummingbird would actually fly into the cage, and the scientists would lower the door to actually catch the hummingbird. And so this would trap the hummingbird in the cage. They'd go retrieve the hummingbird, do some measurements, and then let the hummingbird go. But thinking of a fishing line strung in the forest is not probably the most ideal situation. So my father approached me and said, "Hey, can you make this wireless?" So I said, "Of course, let's make it wireless." So that's where I come in, but let's understand why. So making it go wireless would reduce the limitation on the cage's positioning in the field, right? These are all measured in the field, increasing the distance from the cage as needed, and increase the hummingbird catch percentage, right? So a manual movement of the fishing line sometimes would startle the birds, so you needed a way to make it not as startling for the hummingbirds. So if we actually look at the cage now, this is a picture of the actual cage with the wireless box on top. So you see the hummingbird, you got the door in front there, and you got the box on top. Here it is actually showing the working of the door now, right? So I've pressed the button. There is a pin on the box that actually releases the door. And as you can see now, my father is resetting the cage. And so then that allows you to then do it again, right? So I press the button and the door drops using gravity to actually trap the bird inside the cage. Here's a view of the front of it, right? You can see there's a pin holding the door up, and then you've got the box on top with a battery, a rechargeable battery as well. So here's the block diagram of the insides, right? So we've got a servo controlling the pin, hooked up to an Arduino Uno, which is hooked up to a UHF radio with a key fob, and of course a rechargeable battery that can give you about 20 hours of battery life with the power I'm using. Here's the inside of the box. This is my Rev A design. You've got the servo on the left, the wireless, and the Arduino. And here's actually another picture of my assembly line. So I've actually made multiple of these boxes, and I actually moved the radio to the top of the Arduino shield. Now, here is it in actual action. So it's hard to see from the video, I know, but there's a bird that's about to fly into the cage. I press the button, and I've now trapped the hummingbird in that cage. And then the scientists will go up and then retrieve the bird. So it's a little bit of a delicate process. You actually grab the hummingbird and put it into basically a mesh bag because it's a very sensitive bird, right? You want to make sure and actually put it in there, have a good place to store it until you can take those measurements. And the measurements are done right away so that the bird's not in the bag too long. Now, as far as resetting the cage, you simply just hook it back up onto the pin and you're ready to catch the next bird. So let me show you how it's done. This is what happens when the scientist actually goes to ban the hummingbird. So he's using an expansion tool to actually expand the band so that we can put it on the bird's foot. And so it goes on usually the right leg. And so it's putting into the set of pliers there. And the next page is to actually get the bird. So we're pulling the bird out of the bag, and this is where we'll be able to actually band it, take some measurements, and things like that. So as I mentioned, the birds are quite small. I mean, if you notice the person's hands here, you can see how small the actual hummingbird is. One of the tricks you can do is if you actually put the bird upside down and place something simply lightly over its head, it becomes quite docile at this point, and actually will let you handle them and things like that. So you can see he's lifting up that right leg there and placing the band on the foot of the hummingbird. And this is, of course, documented and recorded and goes into a database so that other people that catch them can then compare against where the bird's been seen before and things like that. So we're using a set of calipers to measure like the things like the wing length. As you can see, the wing length here is about 38 millimeters or about 40 millimeters in length, and then also measuring the beak to see how long the beak is. We also measure the tail feathers, and all of that is documented to determine, how old the hummingbird might be, the age and the sex, and things like that. Right now, actually inspecting a portion of the beak can also tell you a little bit about the bird's age, and so that's why I use the magnifying glass to look at some of the lines on the beak. Right now, they're inspecting what called the gorget feathers, or the ones in the very front, and so those are the feathers that can also help determine some of the age of the hummingbird. Now the hummingbird's getting weighed. As you can see on the screen here, that's about 3.1 grams, so incredibly light. And of course, at the end, you get to release them. So that was a slow motion of the hummingbird being released, and now here it is in full speed. Incredibly quick, like I said, like 60 miles an hour. So here's another half speed of a hummingbird deciding he is ready to go. And again, same shot at half speed, at full speed. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned a lot, and have a great day.